Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another edition of the Mandatory Live. We got a full stacked fight preview for you, and that's because, Brian, we got a crazy Saturday on this Terence Bud Crawford card. There's about 6 fights that are going to be absolutely amazing that I think everyone's looking forward to. But before we get into all of that, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you have already subscribed. We do appreciate you. Thank you for rocking with the show. We're also on the audio side, guys. So if you missed this, you can always stream us wherever you get audio. And remember to leave us, a 5-star if you got a couple of minutes, and follow us on our social media channels. We're at the Mandatory TKO. Brian, like I was saying, there is about like 6 fights on this card. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. How stoked are you for this?
I just hate that SummerSlam is on the same day. But listen, man, Terence Crawford's back. That's reason to celebrate. We know he only fights once a year. So he's fighting at 154 also. We're going to get into that. Like stepping into a new challenge at this stage of his career is going to be very interesting to see how he handles 154. He's been wanting to do that for a while, per his own admission. We also have Isaac Cruz versus Jose Valenzuela, which is going to be like just two dudes trying to knock each other out very early on in the fight. Unfortunately for Valenzuela, he's had a knockout before, so we'll see what happens there. Andy Ruiz, Jarrell Miller, Jared Anderson has a stiff test. We'll get into that. Andy Cruz and David Morrell, who's sneakily like not even being talked about and fighting for a world title. This card is good. This card is good.
And we know how good David Morrell is. We know how good Andy Cruz is. And I don't even think both of them are being talked about enough for this card. And that's because this card is absolutely stacked. Big Baby Anderson is in here on this card. And we got Andy Ruiz and Miller. Like, this is going to be a crazy card. I'm excited for it. And I wish boxing had more cards like this. And hopefully this is the start of it. I also like that it's in LA because it's been a minute since we've had a fight in LA. And if I was available to it, I would have gone to it. But by the way, we are going to be doing a post-fight show. So after the fights, after SummerSlam, we're going to be rocking with you. Brian will have you updated on everything SummerSlam as well. And we will be taking your comments. So keep that in mind as well. Keep the comments coming today as well. We will get to them. But Brian, let's start off to my favorite other fight on this card, Brian. Andy Ruiz is going to be back in the ring. And I'm a little bit biased there, but straight up on the money line, he's a minus 370, and he's taken on Jarrell Miller, who is a plus 280. This is going to be a very good fight. It's been a minute since Andy Ruiz has been in the ring, so I wonder if there's going to be some rust there. But Jarrell Miller coming off a loss in a fight where I think a lot of people thought he was going to win. How do you see this one going? How are you betting it?
Yeah, I thought Jarrell Miller actually was going to give Daniel Dubois some problems, and he did early on. My concern here is that while Andy Ruiz should be the favorite and it's just better all around, and there's a full circle moment here that I'm going to get to in a second. That's the most interesting piece of this fight for me. Andy Ruiz, we haven't seen him in 2 years. The last time we saw him, he got by Luis Ortiz. It wasn't a fight that, while unanimous decision, he didn't dominate that fight. Like, he scored the knockdowns, but Luis Ortiz was actually having a bunch of moments in that fight. Clearly won a bunch of the rounds. And, he's 43 years old. He got dropped multiple times. He was dropped before that, obviously, by Deontay Wilder multiple times. So, like, you kind of suspected the chin was weak and the age was a factor there. So, like, while it was a nice win, it wasn't a win that made me think, oh, Andy Ruiz is absolutely going to be a contender again and a fixture in the heavyweight division. And now 2 years later, he's returning to the ring against Jarrell Miller, who fought more recently, much more recently. And the full circle moment that I alluded to here, if people don't remember this is important. In 2019, Jarrell Miller was actually supposed to fight Anthony Joshua in June. And this is when he got popped for steroids, multiple steroids, like 3 failed tests or whatever it was. He gets suspended. In his place goes Andy Ruiz. And 6 weeks later, he knocks out Anthony Joshua in one of the funniest fights in boxing history, and also one of the biggest upsets in boxing history. Upset of the year for sure in 2019 at Madison Square Garden, Anthony Joshua's American debut. And it was kind of like oh, here we go again with the British heavyweight, disappointing when the moment matters the most, and Andy Ruiz becomes unified heavyweight champion. And then he ballooned up and lost the belt immediately after, got outboxed by Anthony Joshua, who got his revenge in a fight that was less whelming, I guess, than the first one, to make up a word. But now full circle, we have Andy Ruiz versus Jarrell Miller. I think that's super interesting. I don't know what this does for the winner. I kind of think it depends on how it goes. I don't really have a bet that I absolutely love for this fight, but it's probably for me Jarrell Miller or nothing, because I don't feel like I'm getting a lot of value on Andy Ruiz, whether points or by knockout. The worry about Jarrell Miller is the gas tank, but I'm putting him up against somebody who hasn't fought in 2 years. So I have reason to be concerned about both their gas tanks before looking at, hey, this is also in the heavyweight division. So I don't know what anybody's going to have left after like round 8 or 9. So I may not bet on this fight at all, but to me, this is probably Jarrell Miller, or I just stay away from it.
Are you
Because
taking Jarrell Miller for this fight over Andy Ruiz?
I just said, like, I don't know if I'm going to bet on it at all.
No, I'm not even talking about a bet. I'm just saying who you're picking, like who you see is winning on this fight.
Oh, probably Andy Ruiz, but I'd rather bet on Jarrell Miller. I'm not sure how much sense that actually makes, but it's just like, all right.
No, that makes sense if there's value on Jarrell Miller, right?
That's what I'm saying. It's like the value bet is on Jarrell Miller here, because Andy Ruiz hasn't fought in 2 years. Why am I betting him at minus 370 when he didn't even look that awesome in his last fight before that? So
for me, I think Andy Ruiz has dropped so much weight. He's in incredible shape. He's been waiting for a fight, but that's the only thing. It's the layoff. But I think once Andy Ruiz gets into a rhythm, I think Jarrell Miller is going to have his success early on. And the last time that I saw Jarrell Miller, he looked terrible. And that's the only thing that I can go off of. He came in extremely overweight, and I did see a comment saying that Jarrell Miller looks to be in shape, but is he in better shape than Andy Ruiz? I don't think so.
He's a big baby shape. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He's looking swollen, big baby shape. But even then, I am looking at this fight and I'm thinking about conditioning. I'm thinking about how Daniel Dubois took care of Jarrell Miller in a fight where Jarrell Miller should have won that fight. I'm sorry. Like going into it, I did not take Daniel Dubois. Also, I think there's a lot riding on this fight because Andy Ruiz has been out of the ring for almost 2 years. I think it's legit like a year and like 11 months since we've seen Andy Ruiz, something like that. It's close to 2 years. And the fact that Jarrell Miller lost to Daniel Dubois and Daniel Dubois was able to get it done, Andy Ruiz has to have a good performance. Because if he doesn't, then we're questioning everything about Andy Ruiz. So a lot is riding for him on this fight because there was so much conversation about who Andy Ruiz was going to fight at one point. And no fights ended up happening for him. Remember, there were rumors like maybe Andy Ruiz should fight Usyk. Like, is this fight going to happen? We never saw any of this go down. So there's a lot riding on this fight for someone like Andy Ruiz, and I think he's going to have enough motivation to get it done against Jarrell Miller, who looked absolutely terrible against Daniel Dubois, came in overweight. His conditioning, he's not going to be able to handle Andy Ruiz's speed because that's the one thing Andy Ruiz
if he still has that, if he still has it.
Listen, the way that he's looking right now, Andy Ruiz, how he's looked the last 2 years, he seems like he's focused. Like we always go back to how he upset Anthony Joshua and then came back. You know, he got hood rich and he spent his money, gained a lot of weight, and didn't take that fight seriously. But he kind of changed that around. And it's unfortunate we haven't seen him in the ring for 2 years, but this is his time to put on a good performance because he is getting older. Like I think Andy Ruiz is like sneakily like 30 something now.
He'll be 35.
Yeah, like
this year.
Like I remember when he was like way younger, and now I'm like, whoa. Andy Ruiz is getting old. So this is one of those fights where I think he has to have a good performance, and I'm just not betting on Jarrell Miller. Like for me, he's too much. I don't believe in Jarrell Miller at this point in his career, and it's hard to go against a guy like Andy Ruiz for me. So the odds actually They're not all up for rounds. I see this one actually possibly going the distance
Me too. In a
because
nasty, ugly, fucking
yes,
disgusting clinch fest.
because I think Andy Ruiz will, he'll have the speed, he'll be able to land punches. But the fact that he wasn't able to get Luis Ortiz out the way, and we know how strong Luis Ortiz is, and
Mhm.
then that 2-year layoff, and this is his first time back in like 2 years, I don't see him getting the knockout or the stoppage. I see it going the distance, but I do think Ruiz should try to get the knockout and stoppage. But if he's going to get it against someone, it'll probably be someone like Jarrell Miller, who looked terrible against Daniel Dubois. That's all I'm going to say. I'm off Jarrell Miller right now. That's all I'm saying.
I might not bet on this fight at all, to be honest. I don't even think this is an enjoyable fight to bet on. I think the next one is, which we're going to talk about in a second. But last note, Jarrell Miller has fought twice since Andy Ruiz last fought, and also fought the same summer that Andy Ruiz fought because he was on his comeback trail, so to speak. So he's been more active. But again, I don't think this is an enjoyable fight to bet on from like a
Who
you
cares
know
if he's
an
been
arse.
active? He looks out of shape, and he doesn't even sit on his
I
punches.
don't know
He
where I don't know I don't know where Andy Ruiz is at this point. So there's just too much unknown for me to be confident in that. Especially because Andy Ruiz, like, he hasn't fought since September 2022, and before that, he last fought in May 2021. That was the Chris Arreola fight, and I didn't think he looked amazing in that.
You put some respect on Chris Ariel's name, all right? That's a Cali guy. You put some respect on his
I mean,
name.
he
No,
did,
that was a
yeah,
great
because
fight.
he knocked down Andy Ruiz in that fight. Like, honestly, like uh,
It's in heavyweight boxing, anything can happen. But if I'm just going by off what we saw in our last fights and what I've seen Andy Ruiz just off videos and how he's in shape and how he's focused, and I just look at the skill set, I'm rocking with Andy Ruiz in this fight. He's one of my favorite
we
heavyweights.